What you embody manifests. What you embody manifests. I say that a lot up here. It's the heart of our teaching. There's this saying in our teaching, change your thinking, change your life. And that's a good start. Because you got to change your thinking to get to even begin the work of embodiment. But it's not till we fully embody this stuff that you can see a few changes happen just from changing your thinking, but the real changes happen once you start feeling that embodiment start occurring, start taking it in. Now, athletes and musicians, they know what I'm talking about. They know what I'm talking about when it comes to their sport or instrument. They may not know what I'm talking about. They may not even think that they can relate this to consciousness, but it's the same thing, right? I get this idea to play a new riff on my guitar. And so when I'm first trying to play it, I have to think about it. I have to think about it a lot, each note at a time as I'm working out the riff, right? I do that for a while. And then all of a sudden, I practice, and I practice, and I practice, and I get a little better at it, and I start feeling the riffs start to come, but I still got to think about it some now, not as much as I did in the beginning, but I still have to think about it some. And I practice, and I practice, and I practice, and then the day finally comes when I'm playing the riff, and I'm going, whoa, look at my fingers go. I don't have to think about it anymore. That's embodiment. And what we're talking about here is the instrument of consciousness. When we get it in tune, the music, and start playing that music because we practice so much, the music that comes out of our consciousness, that gets created in the world, is gorgeous. That's the possibility here. Takes practice, like any skill. Practice, practice, practice. The more you practice, the better you get at it. So last Sunday, we did a practice. Instead of me getting up here and talking, we set up all the folks came in the center aisle. We set up 2 rows of folks. There were so many people here. It had to bend over to the left and around. And one by one, people walked up the center, and folks were saying to them affirmations that were up on the board, or they were making up their own in terms of these positive affirmations, letting folks know how amazing they are, how beautiful they are. And there were some really interesting things that happened. A lot of you folks who were there came up to me afterwards and said, when we first started this, I was really uncomfortable. And one of the practices that I spoke about a long time ago was lean into your uncomfortability. And so a lot of folks did that. They leaned into their uncomfortability, and they said that by doing that, they got to have an experience of taking in, feeling loved and appreciated, and how amazing they were. And like Shelley said, high the whole week. Shelley there. Said high the whole week. And that was possible by working through the uncomfortability. But maybe some of you had an experience that was similar to mine. When I walked it, the first thought that popped into my head the first thought that popped into my head was, this is the same stuff they're saying to everybody. It doesn't mean anything. Ooh. Now, luckily, I've been practicing this stuff long enough where I said, oh, that's interesting, and just put that thought aside and spent the rest of the time just taking it in. Yeah, I am amazing. Yeah, I am wise. I am courageous. And I just took it in, and it was so yummy. Oh, it felt so good. What could have happened if I hadn't been well practiced at this is I could have caught up, where did that thought come from? Oh, I need to think about why I was thinking that and this and that and the other thing, and gotten really stuck in my head and missed the whole thing. Has that ever happened to you? But if you practice this stuff enough and you start getting it embodied, you don't get stuck in your head so much. You get to be present and just put those thoughts away. Just drop them. Don't give them any attention. Don't give them import, which is one of the practices, is to not give our thoughts import, not to make them important, but to be able to move beyond them and be here in our hearts and just feel open and yummy and just to let that love come through. And that's an experience that a lot of folks got to have last week, including me. And so we practice and we practice. And so that's one practice, is to put our thoughts aside, not to give them importance, not to think we're so darn important with our thoughts. I find my thoughts interesting, isn't that interesting? I just don't like to give it a lot of importance. But, I'm sure I'm not the only one here who finds their own thoughts interesting. A couple weeks ago, about a week and a half ago, all right. We'll keep our hands down here, I think. Or at least I'll do my best to do that. I was in a meeting about 10 days ago. And I brought this great idea to this meeting. I thought it was a great idea. It was my idea. And the people in the meeting, some of them didn't think it was such a great idea. And I was like, what do you mean you don't think this is a great idea? It's my idea. And so I'm in there and I'm talking in this meeting and there's tension building, right? And all of a sudden I recognize, hold on a second, I'm being defensive. This is a really good time to use another one of the practices I've talked about, soften and be curious. And so that's what I did. I softened, got curious, dropped my defensiveness, and then all of a sudden it became this brainstorming session that what came out of it, I think, because that's going to drive me a bit crazy, I'm going to change from this. Who's got the handheld? Hello. Luke. No. Okay. That's great. So, where was I? Oh, I was saying how, so out of it came, what we got out of the meeting was, something way better, because we brainstormed and thought about it and talked about it, and that would have never happened had I not softened and been curious. Have I stayed in a space if I was so darn sure I was right? And so I was really happy about this after the meeting. I'm going, wow, I'm patting myself on the back. Look at me. I shifted right there in the meeting, and that way it turned out better, and we got this whole better idea because of it, and isn't that great? And I didn't beat myself up for not getting that way sooner or not showing up that way, because that doesn't help when you're practicing. Right? If I'm trying to fix a riff, trying to work on a riff, and I'm getting on my case because I don't have it down today, how am I going to get better at it? So I patted myself on the back and I was like, you know what? There was a time I wouldn't have thought of that until after the meeting was over. And I would have been defensive through the whole meeting. And then there was a time when I would have stayed defensive even after for whatever. I would have never even dawned on me to soften and get curious. This was better. And better is better. And that's how you practice. Right? So I was really happy about that. So look at that stuff in your life. See how you're doing with your progress. We are not all at the same skill level. In fact, every single one of us is at a different skill level, because it's about practice. And the more you practice these principles that we have here, like soften and be curious, lean into where it's uncomfortable, These kinds of practices, they bring you to a place of tuning into your soul's intention, your awakening consciousness. That instrument gets tuned and you get to hear more powerful music, more beautiful music, your life, the quality of your life. Gets to rise. You get to see more of the beauty. Sometimes in bed I fart. Oh yeah, like I'm the only one here who does that. And when I first got together with Ash, she loves to get behind me and cuddle in really tight, right? And when we first got together and she would do that, and that would happen, she would freak out like the bed was on fire. How could you do that? Oh my God, that's the worst thing ever. And I noticed just the other day when that happened, there was nothing. She didn't say nothing. Not a thing. And I thought about that, and I thought about that transformation. And I thought, and I know it sounds silly, but think about it for a second. The top on the toothpaste, how you put on the paper roll, all the things that you go to war about in your relationships, the color of the flooring, the color of the walls, the furniture, whatever it is that you're so darn sure you're right about, that it needs to be a particular way, that it shouldn't be this way. Nobody should fart in bed. It's these other things. Whatever you're going to war about, you think your spiritual leader isn't human and that kind of stuff doesn't happen, But anyway, the idea being, what are you going to war about? Because if you are, how on earth do you think we're ever going to handle peace in the Middle East? Peace in the Ukraine, if you can't handle peace in your relationships? And some of you may be saying, well, wait a minute. I don't want to be a doormat, just let this person do whatever they want. I don't think Jesus was a doormat. I don't think Gandhi was a doormat. Gandhi was so effective in his nonviolence, in his peaceful presence, that he got in the biggest army in the world to march out of his country and gain freedom for it. So we have examples of effectiveness when you're not so darn sure you're right in how you got to go about things. So look for how you're warring in your world. And I promise you, if your back gets defensive, if you're so darn sure you're right, there's a war going on. It may not be with guns and bombs and all that stuff, but this is how it begins. And so when we can look at that, we begin to make those changes that then allow us the bigger change of peace in the world. Starts here. Catherine was saying that just yesterday. We had a meeting of the practitioners here, and Catherine was saying how she has recognized that everything in her life is about what's going on in here, and the change that is made for her in her life. That's what's possible. When we look here, instead of going, this is wrong out here, this is wrong. Wait a minute, take a look here. Because if you're saying that's wrong, then you're thinking you're so darn right. And that means you're going to war. So we got these practices to help us be more peaceful, be less suffered, and experience less suffering. And you might notice that in sports or in music, there's not a lot of folks at the top of the pyramid. Not a lot of folks who are master of those particular realms, who have mastered those skills. Well, turns out there's even less when you look at the instrument of consciousness. Mother Teresa, Dalai Lama, who says he hasn't even mastered it yet. Gandhi, Jesus, Buddha. You can name them off, right? It's harder to do if you were to name all the top sports stars throughout the ages, or the top music stars throughout the ages. Well, why is that? Is that because this is so much tougher? I don't think so. I think it's because not enough people are playing the game. If more people got into the game of consciousness, we'd have more stars. That's what it is. Now, here's the thing, when you practice music, you set a time, schedule time for practice, and then you set a time for the concert, the game, the playing. Sports, there's the time for practice set aside, and there's the time for the game set aside. Well, in this game, it's a little different. You can practice in the morning, but then even in the practice is the game. Every moment of every day is the game. So it makes it a little tougher because you're never not in the game, except when you don't realize you're in it. Have you ever meditated in the morning and then all of a sudden the garbage truck passes outside and you're like, oh, that destroyed my meditation. Or there's construction across the way. Or all of a sudden, there's a dog going outside, and so your dog starts barking like crazy. How could you bark during my meditation? The game's on, even then. How do we get a hold of ourselves? How do we say, hey, that's right. I want to be in tune with my soul's intention, my higher consciousness. That's what I want here. Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world. That's embodiment. Be embodiment. Takes practice. Now, I have a lot of embodiment around my guitar playing. Somebody says D chord, my hand just goes there, A chord. Somebody says to me, play a C sharp 11 with a flat 5. I got to think about it, right? It's the same thing here. We gain our embodiment as we're going along. Some things come in easier than others. So some things take more thought. But if you don't even know you're in the game, you don't even know you to think about it. If you don't even know you're playing this concert every moment of every day, maybe you're not thinking about it. That this is about how you're in tune to your soul's intention. This is about how you're in tune and playing the music of your life. Of your life. Somebody said to me once, oh, what you're preaching is just for old people. Young people don't need this. We're not there yet. And I'm saying if I knew this stuff when I was in my 20s, what a higher quality of life I would have lived. Now, I'm very grateful I got here when I did. Because the quality of my life these days astounds me. The quality of my wife's life, it astounds us. That we've achieved this level of peace, joy, love, amazement. Our journey is extraordinary now, which is what motivates me to want to get up here and let you guys know what you embody manifests. And embodiment comes through practice. Remember, every moment of every day you're in the game. There is no time you're not. You're playing that concert every moment of every day is a chance to bring forth, an opportunity to bring forth this practice, to raise your vibration, to become in tune with your soul's intention, to love your life. The outside circumstances cannot steal your love of your life unless you let it. What you embody manifests. Let's manifest a loving, thriving, transformational world together. Let's stop warring by being so sure we're right, and soften and be curious. Lean into where we're uncomfortable. Bring forth that which is your power and presence, remembering your spiritual power, that you are a powerful, creative, spiritual being that can bring forth that power and energy of the universe in any second of any day. That all that's happened is you forgot. And that one of the practices is remembering. That's what's possible. Let's open to this possibility together. Let's bring forth that life that we all want to imagine and beyond our imagination together. I love you all so much. Thank you.